Welcome to the Film Geezers podcast. Hello and welcome to the Film Geezers podcast. It's been a while since I've said that.
Yeah.
I'm Robbo and I'm joined as always by Cheeto.
Hello.
And today we're going to revisit one of our first ever podcasts.
I think it was the first, wasn't it?
Yeah. Which we recorded, I think, nearly
April,
a year,
was it?
nearly a year
Yeah,
ago.
around there,
So, yeah, it's our top 10 favourite films. So it's not top 10 films, it's our own personal, well, it's top 10 films, but... And the reason we've done this is because, obviously, what we've found is we've watched a lot more films since last year. I joined Letterboxd in August of last year. Letterboxd is an app that allows you to... it's like a film diary, but it also allows you to rate your films and also review them as well.
Yeah.
And since I think I joined in August, and my first entry is August the 17th, I've watched 124 films since then.
Not bad.
Some of them, obviously, rewatched.
Yeah.
But a lot of new ones that I've never seen before.
Letterboxd is great,
yeah.
And I think another reason as well is because obviously we've had a year to sort of get used to this now. Like if you go back and listen to the original, Jesus Christ, that's all I can say. And
yeah,
we were talking before. We put a lot more time into our top tens this time, where before it was like an idea. And looking back on it, some of my top 10. I just put the movies on there because I couldn't think of anything else. Where now I've actually had time to think about it, and these are definitively our top 10 films. So
might change because we might.
Oh, this is the thing.
That's
Everyone's top 10 is always going to change around, isn't it? You know, but I don't know about you, but I've got some honourable mentions because it was really, really hard.
It was, yeah. There's some films that I've watched that I thought were really, really good, but just probably didn't make it into my top 10.
I mean, how would you put
some that were in my top 10 which have gone now?
Yeah, same here.
So, it's difficult because again, there's. How did you sort of pick the films that you were going to include?
Well, to start off with, I was like, what are the films that mean the most to me? And I sort of picked a couple, and then I was like, what are films that I can be watching? And then I thought, bare bones, like, what is just the films that I absolutely adore? And those are the main things how I come up with my top 10. But there's a load of different things, but I was just with watchability, how much I love the film, how much actually I think it... Because this thing, like you said, it's not what we think are the top 10 movies of all time. It's our favourite movies of all time, you know, so... It's a totally different list, and it is our opinion. Everyone's going to have different opinions, you know. But
I went through and I looked at, you know, what movies have I rated 5-star?
Yeah,
and then I thought, well, that's not necessarily my favourites.
No,
because there's some that are really probably shit movies, but I can rewatch.
Well, they just mean something to you. Like, say for instance, Shawshank Redemption. You know, I think everyone knows that's a 5-star film, but it's not on either of our lists because it's how these things are on it. But I don't know if you want to start off with some of your honourable mentions if you got any.
Well, a couple of ones that were on my list before. Silence of the Lambs, that's now been replaced. But I mean, it's a great film, but I wouldn't say it's my absolute favourite. 12 Angry Men. Again, I think the reason it made my list is because I'd only just recently watched it.
Yeah, and recency bias is very real. Yeah.
And although it is a fantastic film, it's probably one of the best courtroom dramas. Again, it's not quite made it onto my list and has been replaced.
That's fair.
There's some that are on your list, which are not on mine. So I don't know.
Do you want me to say a couple of mine?
Yeah, go on then.
Well, I've tried to stick to a rule where I want to do one per franchise or trilogy because I don't want to do like So I've got a couple. So I'm going to go from least to...
These are your honourable mentions.
Yeah, to best. So I've got down The Thing.
Yep.
that was really hard to keep off because it is, in my opinion, I think both have been the best horror film of all time. This one was really hard to keep off. People may be surprised at it, but Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, it's really highly rated, and
I've got a Tarantino film on mine, but it's not Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
This is the thing, I wanted the Tarantino film, and I thought, I looked at my list, I was like, oh my god, I don't actually have a Tarantino film, even though he was one of my favourites, but I just couldn't get my list.
And obviously Reservoir Dogs again is another.
Reservoir Dogs is so close as well. I love that film. Pulp Fiction as well.
Yeah.
Another one is you're probably gonna be shocked, but it's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I don't have an Indiana Jones film on my top 10.
No, okay, it was on there before,
which is really hard. This is Platoon is another one.
Yeah,
because I love Platoon.
Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
Again, it's a fantastic film and I love it, but it's just not got onto my.
And it's weird how these things happen, isn't it? Just one that's stormed its way onto my honorable mentions is Zack Snyder's Justice League, and that was really hard to keep off. I mean, I know it only came out last year, but I mean, such an improvement. And for a 4-hour film, it did not feel like 4 hours. That's all I got to say. Watch it. If you've seen the Justice League, the original one, and you're put off, I tell you, DC are in a much better place now than they were 5 years ago. So
I've only seen the Zack Snyder version. So
it'd be quite interesting if you watch the original, just to see how much the improvement.
I'm kind of a little bit reluctant now.
And I think my last one, which just missed out, like minuscule missed out on the top 10, is Goodfellas. Yeah, I love Goodfellas, but it's just, once again, there's 10 movies ahead of it. So
Unforgiven for me, as well. I've got a Western on there, and it was close, but I just think, I mean, Unforgiven is a great film. I mean, it basically reignited the Western genre.
Yeah, and we're getting Westerns nowadays, isn't it? And if it wasn't for that film, then it...
Yeah. But yeah, and like, there's a few, Dark Knight, for example.
Yeah.
It's not on my list, but it was close because when I compiled my original list, I'd never seen it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of odd. And now the Dark Knight trilogy is one of my favourite franchises.
It's crazy how it happens, isn't it?
Yeah. Because we had an agreement, didn't we, that you'd watch the Godfather trilogy and I'd watch the Dark Knight trilogy.
Well, I've seen 1 and 2 masterpieces. I'm not looking forward to seeing 3, but
yeah. But yeah, there's it's weird. I'd not seen American Psycho. I'd not seen Fight Club. I'd not seen Moon. I'd not seen Parasite. All great films.
Well, this is the thing. I think you can be a huge film buff, and there's always some films everyone has where they just, because you're not. Let's face it, you're not going to be able to watch every single film, are you?
No.
There's always going to be films that. Yeah. I mean, there's still classics that I've never seen before in my life.
Yeah.
I've made it my challenge to watch all of them, but it's trying to get around and doing it, But I think is that the honourable mentions all of all? Do you have any more?
Yeah. No, I mean, I could go on forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just.
I think we should leave it at that, really, innit?
Yeah. So I'm going to let you start.
Okay.
This time.
Number 10 is a movie.
Well, I've not really done mine in order.
Have
so,
you not?
No, I've done in no particular order.
I've done mine in order.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Number 10 is Heat.
Yeah.
I absolutely love Heat, and
that's on my list.
Is actually. Yeah. Well, let's talk about it. Yeah. Let's talk about it.
Obviously, I saw Heat in the cinema.
Yeah.
And when it came out, it was billed as like the first big pairing of De Niro and Pacino. The first time they'd ever meet on screen. And I think they spend about 10-15 minutes on screen together. There's
a couple of scenes. So there's the scene before they get the coffee, and then there's a scene in the coffee house, and then the scenes at the end. But there's still. It's either it shows like De Niro's face or Pacino's face, but not at the same time. I think that was the whole big thing around it. But
and it's Michael Mann directed it.
Yeah.
Also stars.
You got Val Kilmer, Tom Sizemore.
Tom Sizemore's in it.
Yeah.
And it's essentially a heist movie.
It is. Yeah.
But you've got De Niro's kind of the leader of this gang of sort of elite.
Well, they're all military. They were because it's Neil, and he wants he gets his team together, and he wants one last big heist, doesn't he, before he goes to retirement.
Yeah, and then you've got Pacino, who's Vincent, who's the detective trying to bring him down, and what you find is that actually they're sort of mutual respect for each other, really.
And you would not expect that, would you? And
they meet in this coffee shop, and they talk about actually, like, in the real world they might have been friends.
Yeah.
But they're saying, I wouldn't hesitate to take you down if I needed to. But yeah, it's a brilliant film. Some really good action sequences in there.
I mean, you think of all-time action scenes, and just that whole shootout scene after the bank heist. And what I didn't realise is Michael Mann, actually, the reason why the sound quality is amazing, because he didn't decide to add in sound after. He actually attached all the actors with guns, with microphones, and shot obviously when they're shooting the blanks, that's raw sound, so it sounds so good. And it's not just a aimless action scene. It's got there's plot there, isn't there? And there's this story there, and it's just great movie. It's a great film, isn't it? It really is.
And it's one of those where I can't really point out any negatives. No. There's no real flaws to it.
No, I mean, I hear people say, "Oh, but it's 3 hours." But one, it doesn't feel like 3 hours at all, does it? And two, you get 3 hours of heat, and it needs to be 3 hours because it needs to set up. And this is the thing that very few movies have a plot so thick and so deep and just a great story that and it needs that 3 hour long runtime for that, And
I don't get it with runtimes. Why people complain so much? They can't sit in the cinema for 3 hours
the casuals are
such a short attention span. And I'm agreement when I can't remember who it was said that every scene should move the plot along, and you get a lot of films where the story drags a little bit because they stick in scenes that don't really need to be in there, and they kind of kill the story dead. But with Heat, it doesn't. It's just moving the plot along. Every scene is needed. I think.
100%.
And every scene something is actually happening. Might not be action, but it's key to the.
This is the thing,
and obviously character development is a big thing as well.
Yeah, and I think Michael Mann, why the film's so good is because he focuses so much on character development. Yeah, it has these huge action set pieces you'd expect in a massive blockbuster, but it also has these character moments, and that's why. I mean, we should say spoilers because obviously at the end it makes it so much more meaningful. When they when Neil's there dying, they grab hands, don't they? Yeah. And he just sits there, and the movie ends, and it just makes it so much more impactful. The main thing I think we're trying to get is that every scene in Heat is so impactful and it's so well thought out. And I mean, can you think of any crime thrillers that are better than that? That is the pinnacle.
Yeah, I don't think so. No, I mean, there's a lot of films that have been influenced by that.
Yeah.
I mean, even Dark Knight. There's the bank robbery scene in the Dark Knight, which has been.
I mean, Christopher Nolan even said that he was inspired by Heat.
So, yeah, good film. Right.
You're next.
Okay, so one that didn't make it onto yours, Goodfellas. Which, to me, right now, I like Scorsese. I love Scorsese, but I think Goodfellas is kind of the pinnacle of his career.
Yeah.
In terms of the sort of crime films, it's again stars De Niro, Ray Liotta, and Joe Pesci, which I think was one of his earliest performances. Pesci, I think.
Yeah.
And I think he was nominated for an Oscar for that, wasn't he?
He won it.
He won it.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Okay. Essentially, it's about. It's supposed to be based on a true story. I don't know how true stories are, but it's about a guy who was involved in the mob as from an early age, and then when it got to a point where he was going to be prosecuted, he basically informed turned into an FBI informant and is now supposedly living in witness protection. But again, it's one of those films that it's quite long.
Yeah.
But
once again, all scenes are impactful.
Yeah.
And they move the story along.
It is, yeah. And again, it's another character development is very big in this as well.
Yeah.
Great performances, excuse me, great cinematography. One of my top 10, I think, opening scenes.
Oh yeah,
we covered this in the previous podcast. I think the opening scene is brilliant, and there's nothing not to like about it. I can't really critique it in any way. Just anything negative.
I always hear people say that Goodfellas is those very few films where it is flawless, isn't it?
Yeah,
there's not.
I think so.
I mean, I think personally, for me, like I said, this may be quite a weird thing to say, but I think this is probably the best gangster movie ever made, or it's definitely my favourite. I mean, I know the Godfather's out there and stuff, but I feel like you're not watching a film, you're watching, cameras actually capture a gangster's everyday goings on, and like I said, every scene is so impactful. There's just little scenes of dialogue, nothing happening, but it's just so impactful, and it's such good story writing, character development. It's just
I mean, I love. Casino again is another Scorsese film which I love, and I just rewatched The Irishman the other day, which again, not as good as Goodfellas. So I think and again, it's one of those that's often been parodied, which is always a good sign of a good film.
Oh yeah.
And again, just one of my favourites.
Like I said, it was so close to being on my list. Right, my next is Gladiator, and I don't think anyone will be shocked about that, but I think this film means so much to me. It's one I've grown up with, certainly, and I know you... Did you go to the cinema to see it?
No. Gladiator was the first DVD.
Yeah, the first DVD ever bought.
2000, yeah.
There's it's a action adventure epic, but it's so much more than that. You ruffle up the surface and you see underneath. There's so much character development. There's so much story there. It is a story about revenge, isn't it? Overall,
yeah.
It's a military general who's been betrayed and sent into slavery. His family's been killed, and he doesn't care about anything anymore. He just wants to get his revenge. And I mean, this is at a time where, I know we've said it quite a few times, but Ridley Scott, he's an all-time director, but he directs an all-time film, doesn't he?
It's a common theme, right? Of somebody being left for dead, family killed. It could be Payback, Mel Gibson.
Oh yeah, true.
Schwarzenegger could have done this. It could have easily been a Schwarzenegger or a Stallone film, but it's just set in obviously ancient Rome. Yeah,
but what I was saying is that this Ridley Scott's done some of the greatest movies of all time, and then he's had some not so good movies after that. But this is prime Ridley Scott, and just everything from the cinematography. I mean, you can tell he's from an advert background, can't you? It's a beautifully shot film, perfectly cut.
Every film of his is I mean, he like you say, his background was in TV advertising. Yeah, so you can see that in his films.
Yeah, just the cinematography alone. But I mean, perfectly cast. And if you think about it, Russell Crowe. But what had he done by then? He'd done a few, obviously, Australian films. He'd done the Insider.
LA Confidential.
Yeah, LA Confidential was sort of on the up. He was still not that leading man though, was he? No. And this just completely changed his career, and he rightfully won the lead acting Oscar. But I just love this film because, like I said, the character of Maximus is so deep. He's like I said, once his family's killed, he just doesn't care anymore. And there's a scene at the end. It's a beautiful ending, by the way. And Connie Nielsen, she says to him, "Go to them. Everything's gonna be fine." And only then he has a smile on his face and he dies. You know, that just shows the character of Maximus, doesn't it? You know.
And there's great supporting performances from like Richard Harris, Oliver
Reed, yeah,
his last film,
yeah.
But also Joaquin Phoenix again, puts in a really good performance as Commodus. Great antagonist,
and he's an antagonist that you actually physically hate, isn't it?
You are.
Entices that hatred that you could have at a real person, you know.
But again, there's nothing really that you can say about that's negative.
I mean, people have said, "Oh, it's not historically accurate," but I don't care. You know, it's.
Yeah, but what film is?
Yeah, I really don't care. What is? It's more of like you said, the story of Gladiator could be set in any time. Ridley just decided to set it in ancient Rome, and. I mean, like what we said, some great set pieces, some great action. For like an epic, there is a lot of dialogue scenes, but once again, it's moving the story along. Yeah. It's very effective.
And again, it's character development as well. You sometimes need that because obviously, usually in a film, you're meeting these characters at a certain point in their life. So you need something to give you an idea of their background, their character. The story arc, really.
I mean, this film's got some of the most brilliant dialogue in it ever, you know. And I mean,
are you not entertained?
And some of the soundtrack is also legendary as well.
Yeah,
you know, Hans Zimmer fully does go all out, and it's not a very Hans Zimmer soundtrack at all, is it?
No,
but and it just. Once again, it just gets film over the finishing line. Okay. But that's the reason why I just love this film, and I will defend it being on my top 10 to the day I die.
So my next one is the only Western that's on mine, and it's The Searchers from 1956. Now, like I say, it was a close one between this and Unforgiven, but I just think this is probably. It's widely considered the best Western ever made, but not just that, but one of the best films ever made. And I think it's probably John Wayne's finest performance. Yeah. Stars John Wayne, like I just said, it's a John Ford film. John Wayne, his character, he comes home after the Civil War to his brother's homestead. Essentially, they're attacked by Apache Indians. His brother's family are killed. Except the youngest daughter, who's kidnapped and taken captive, and it really just follows an epic journey to find his niece, and it's it's kind of action adventure, but it's also it's more deeper than that as well, because you're never quite sure what his motivations are. Whether he's actually searching for her to bring her home, or he's searching for her to actually kill her, and that's not even at the end, right at the end, the final scene where he actually finds her. You're still not sure what he's going to do, but then obviously spoilers, he does take her home. It's been criticised for its depiction of Native American people, but it is of its time. It's the 50s, and you know that's really not an excuse, but you just got to look at it in context of
the world was a very different place back then.
The world was a very different place, but it's well worth. I mean, again, it's the cinematography is amazing. There's some fantastic shots. You've got Monument Valley as a backdrop, which is just adds another character to the whole film. And like I said, I think it's probably John Wayne's finest performance. I know he got an Oscar for True Grit, but I think that was more really just to get.
Is it because he was going at the back end of his career?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, as a more of a.
They just wanted to get because he's a legendary.
Yeah, because they wanted to give him an Oscar. I think.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's well worth watching.
The only bit I've seen of this film is the ending bit, and I believe that they ride off into this.
Yeah,
is that it?
Yeah, basically what happens is he delivers Debbie back to not to his brother, but to some neighbours who are going to look after her, adopt her. And he basically there's a famous shot where the camera's inside the house, it's dark, and he's just framed in the doorway in silhouette, and he just walks away. And it just shows it's we've covered it in a previous podcast. Greatest opening, closing scenes in a film.
Yeah.
This is a device really to illustrate how Ethan is trapped between two worlds, the outlaw West and civilization, and that he doesn't really fit in the new West.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like I say, it's a brilliant movie ending. Covered it in a previous podcast. Again, my favourite, one of my favourite westerns, I think.
Nice. My next, I don't know if it might be on yours, is Seven.
No, it isn't actually, no.
And Seven has been one of those movies where it was definitively on my list, because I can't believe, looking back, I can't believe it wasn't on my previous list, because I've loved this film since I was young, and young enough to where I shouldn't have been watching this film. But I know you said recently you watched it a couple months back and you forgot how good it was.
Yeah, you do. Sometimes you put a film on and you forget how good it is.
Yeah,
and that's a lot of times I'll do that. So yeah, I completely forgot about Seven.
So Seven is about a retiring detective, William Somerset, played by Morgan Freeman, and new recruit who's going to take on his position, called David Mills. Ali Ermey plays the commissioner, doesn't he? And he doesn't think captain. He doesn't think that he's competent enough to take it on this specific case on his own. Yeah. So William Somerset has to. It's like a buddy cop.
Well, he's mentoring him, isn't he? And he doesn't think he doesn't want this to be his first case.
No. Oh yeah, because he actually says that, doesn't he? Yeah. But it's about the 7 deadly sins, and like I said, spoilers, but the serial killer, John Doe, played by Kevin Spacey, like I said, he bases each of his different kills on the 7 deadly sins. And just right then and there, it's such a unique premise, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because, I mean...
again, this film's been featured, I think, in our plot twist episode, our movie endings episode.
It's probably been... Yeah, like I said, we really do like this movie. But I think that's what it... I think that's the main thing that sets it apart, is the fact that it's not just another 90s detective movie, is it? It takes it to that next level where bringing something new in. And I mean, just great performances all round, really, isn't it? You know, I think Kevin Spacey really put himself on them. I know he'd done a couple of things before that, but he put himself really on the map with this, didn't he? And I just love, like I said, I love everything about this movie, but I just love how grimy and dirty the film is. You know, it's I don't believe they actually specify what city they're in, do they?
Or even what era, is it? It's kind of...
Yeah, but it's just always like always raining, always dirty, grimy, and just I think all the good things about 90s movies are in this. I mean, once again, this put David Fincher on the map. Just great writing, great story. It really does entice you through the whole film. What more was there to say, you know?
Yeah, and probably one of the best plot twists, movie endings as well. The
whole what's in the box, everyone knows that, you know. Yeah. But Seven's one of those films where what more can you say? No. And it is, in my opinion, a flawless thriller film.
Again, it's one of those films I can watch anytime, really.
I mean, when I first watched it, I must have watched it about 5 times after that in successive days, because it just is. There's always new things as well that you point out, you know, because even though it may seem like it's a straightforward plot, it's so entangled, but everything just makes sense, doesn't it? And it's so effective, and sometimes it's quite hard to watch at times, but yeah, like I said, what more is there to say? Seven is one of the greatest thrillers of all time, and certainly deserving to be on my list. So yeah.
Right, my next one is Star Wars, later retitled Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope. Now, personally, and I know you probably do as well, and most, I think, Star Wars fans would say that Empire Strikes Back is probably the best of the original trilogy. But I think Star Wars is obviously what started it all.
It's the most important, isn't it? Yeah.
I think the making of it and how it got made is probably more interesting than the actual film itself.
How the fuck they made this film? Like,
I mean, it's, you know, you read about it, and there's obviously a lot of things. There's been a lot said about how it got made, and some of it you don't know whether it's just changed over time, you know, and been embellished a little bit. But from what I understand is George Lucas really wanted to make Flash Gordon because he was a big fan of the old sort of black and white serials like Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon and that. But he couldn't get the rights to it, so he decided to write his own film.
And it's probably the biggest film ever.
Yeah, and up to that point he'd made, I think, 2 films, which is THX 1138, which was a bomb and it almost bankrupted American Zoetrope, which was Francis Ford Coppola's film production company. He made American Graffiti, which was kind of a surprise hit, I think, and then Star Wars. And what more do you want?
Yeah,
you know, Star Wars is a phenomenon.
I mean, obviously, did you must have saw it in cinema, didn't you?
I didn't see not Star Wars. The only one I saw in cinema was Return of the Jedi. But I was hooked because what's not to like? You know, people categorise Star Wars as science fiction. It's not really science fiction. It's more of a fantasy. It's got a lot of the fantasy elements. Yeah. You know, it's got the sort of lore and legend and that sort of thing. Wizards. Yeah, I mean, essentially, you know, Jedi's, you know, Obi-Wan is a wizard, you know, and it's got the common themes, you know, a young man being mentored by an older man,
to take on a greater power.
Yeah, it's got sort of Western elements as well. So a lot of people say it's a Western set in space, which
I could see that, you know,
could be. But yeah,
to be fair, I think, right, you think of 70s films, you think of dark, depressing, slow burning dramas or disaster in the movies, you know, and then you got this space opera that takes you to another world, you know. It just come at the right time, and like you said, it was a phenomenon. It made 700. How much did it make? It made easily, I think, with inflation, it's made like 3 billion or something.
I mean, when it came out, it was the highest grossing film of all time.
Beat Jaws.
It stayed. I think it stayed in top for a long time. I think, but it's just spawned a whole, just Star Wars. what can you call it? Behemoth. I mean, the fact that they're still producing Star Wars related,
and people are still interested in
films and TV series and things. But you know, I mean, the story behind it is Lucas took this story to everybody in Hollywood apparently, and they all turned it down. Yeah. And it was Alan Ladd Jr., who I think has just recently passed away at Fox, that greenlit it, because not so much for the story, but for Lucas himself. And it got so close to being shut down as well. They went over budget and they went over time. And there's all these stories about how they had to kind of shoot, you know, with 3 units just to get it finished, and you know, he was never happy with it. But you know, it just became a phenomenon, and it's hard for people probably born afterwards to imagine a world without Star Wars, because it's always been.
I mean, this is the thing. You try and go a day without someone around you mentioning Star Wars, or you seeing the Star Wars logo or anything to do with it, you know.
Yeah.
I just, like you said, I couldn't imagine the world without Star Wars, really.
I mean, it launched and killed the careers of Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, but, you know, obviously Harrison Ford managed to escape that. But, yeah, it just is. Again, I don't think Lucas is a particularly great filmmaker, a great director. He's probably better at writing, but even that's a bit sketchy.
I
You look at his filmography, and he's not really. He's only directed a handful of films. He's been probably more prolific as a producer.
Yeah,
but
he can write a hell of a story, though, can't he?
He made Star Wars,
yeah.
So what do you want? And he's sat in Skywalker Ranch on his.
He's a very
massive pile of money, isn't he?
Rich man now, yeah. But
so,
I mean, this is the thing. I think people look at Star Wars as the event, and they kind of overlook the film, how great the actual film is itself, though. And I know this is probably the least in your face Star Wars film, but it just is a great film, isn't it? You know, you get you get the introduction to all these iconic characters.
Cutting edge special effects.
Yeah.
You can't not mention the soundtrack from that.
Oh yeah.
John Williams again, probably the greatest movie composer ever, and I think it's got to be.
I mean, like you said with the special effects. I mean, I think when most people think of this film, they probably think of the set piece at the end, the action scenes at the end, with the X-wings and stuff, and that's the sort of thing where at the time, every film we see that type of, obviously better special effects now, but at the time it wasn't a thing.
No.
And like I said, do I think Star Wars would have been successful if it was at another time? Yes. Do I think it would have been that successful? No. I think it was lightning in a bottle moment. It was perfect for the time, and of course, nowadays we know it as what can you call it, a phenomenon?
Yeah.
It's Star Wars.
Well, I think it took everybody by surprise.
Yeah,
to the fact that the studio, they hadn't even got their merchandise ready.
No.
So I think I don't think many people actually thought it was going to be as successful as it was, and I think it did take a lot of people by surprise.
And that's the thing. Even though it's not my favourite Star Wars movie, I have the most respect for it because it did start. And once again, before Star Wars, you'd never seen that much pandemonium surrounding a film.
No,
have you? It kind of set the tone for all these franchises we have nowadays, don't we? But this thing we can ramble about Star Wars.
Let's move on. Come on.
Right, my next. I think it's on your list. Is The Rock.
It's not on my list. No.
It used to be, didn't it?
No, it didn't. No,
did it not?
No.
Oh wow! It's made my top 10.
Again, it's an honourable mention for me. But
people are probably thinking, right? So you got like 7. You got what the hell is The Rock doing on there? But this is my.
I think The Rock is the epitome of 90s action films.
Yeah.
And that's why we love it so much.
Well, it is the popcorn movie, isn't it? It's Michael Bay at his absolute best. He was top of the world at the time. And when we say these 90s tropes and stuff, this is just everything turned to 110, isn't it? You just got non-stop action
You just got to look at the story. It's just absolute bullshit, really.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got a group of disgruntled Marines led by Ed Harris take Alcatraz. They storm Alcatraz, take all the visitors as prisoners, as hostages, and they've got this VX gas that they're going to release, which will kill the entire population of San Francisco. You've got Nick Cage, who's the FBI chemical expert, and then you've got Sean Connery, who is Her Majesty's
What more is there not to love? You know what I mean?
Who's in the 60s? He stole some, I think, J. Edgar Hoover's secret private files, and he was basically detained without.
He basically did not exist, did he?
Yeah, he was detained without a trial, and I think the British government and the American government came to an agreement that he was just never going to see the light of day again, and so he was locked away. And then he has to assist a SEAL team along with Nick Cage's character to basically because he's the only person to have ever successfully escaped from Alcatraz. And it's a bullshit premise, but it is a fun film, and you can't help but smile.
I mean, I'd say this is probably one of the films I've watched most ever. I think because you can just when you're having a good time, you just put it on, don't you? You know, and I mean, this is the thing. It's actually really highly rated. People forget that because it is classic Michael Bay. It's actually a really good film as well, and I mean, it jumps straight into it. You know, you have the Hummel getting the rockets scene. You know, that fires you straight in. And you know the tone of the movie, you know where it was going and stuff.
Is it James Horner did the score?
It was Hans Zimmer and James. It was Hans Zimmer.
Hans Zimmer, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Which is again a very unlike Hans Zimmer like film.
Yeah, you wouldn't see him doing that much, would you? These type of films,
No.
but it is a legendary soundtrack. And like I said, if you've not seen this, then just put it on because it's amazing. I can't say much more than it.
You know, if you can get over the actual story line. But, you know...
A lot of things aren't going to make sense, right? But it's like I said, it's a 90s action film.
And as always, you know, the SEAL team's killed and it's up to Nick Cage and Sean Connery to basically save the day, essentially. And there's a scene at the end that is iconic, I think.
Yeah. Are you talking about
the green smoke scene?
Yeah, the green smoke, yeah. But yeah, like I said, just if you want to have a good time, just put this movie on, sit back and relax and just... watch batshit crazy Michael Bay, and then there's a thing. There's a word called a Michael Bayism.
Yeah,
and I think that really spawns from this movie because it just is like just explosions, the old fucking movie, you know. But it just is a brilliant film and it's a brilliant time, and that's why ultimately it's on my list. So
good choice. My next one is new, and it's a Tarantino film. And it's Inglourious Basterds. Again, I rewatched it recently, and you know how sometimes when you've not watched a film for a while, you forget about it. You forget about the plot, and there's only sort of little snippets that I remember. But I just thought, what a fantastic film it is, and it's set during the Second World War. It's an alternate history. Brad Pitt leads this group of Jewish soldiers. He plays Aldo Ray. He leads this group of Jewish soldiers behind enemy lines, and their remit is just to kill as many Germans as they can, and that's all they're tasked to do. And what they do is they find a group of Germans, they kill them, but they leave one alive. And what they do is they carve a swastika into their forehead, so they've got a permanent. Because what he says to them, he says, "Yeah, you'll go off after the war, you'll make a life for yourself, but I want people to know that you were a Nazi." And you were, you know, and obviously they leave a survivor, really to let other people know and to spread their sort of myth, because this kind of mythology, you know, is created around them, and so they leave a survivor really just to spread that mythology. And Christoph Waltz, he plays the SS captain, I believe, or colonel. Sorry, it's colonel, isn't it? Hans Lander. Brilliant performance. This again, this opening, the opening scene to this is
one of the best, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's featured in our podcast, and it features Christoph Waltz, and he basically gives this like 20-minute monologue in 3 different languages, and it's a brilliant opening. What happens is British intelligence receive a word that Hitler is going to be attending a cinema performance in Paris, and a lot of the high-ranking German chief staff are going to be there, and so British intelligence send an agent, which is Michael Fassbender. That's it, and he's supposed to link up with the bastards, and they're supposed to basically there's a plan to burn the cinema down and kill everybody inside, and they do. They actually manage to kill Hitler. So it is. It's hard to sort of. It's hard to define the genre because it is a war film, but it's not a war film.
No.
Almost. It's very Tarantino.
Especially the end is very Tarantino.
Very Tarantino. Yeah, there's a bit of blood and gore in it and everything, which you'd expect from a Tarantino film. But once again, I think we've always said this: is Tarantino is the king of dialogue.
Yeah,
and that's what he's best at. And there are scenes where, like I say, there's long monologues, there's lots of people talking, but it doesn't doesn't slow the film down. It doesn't bog it down. It moves the film along. And again, there's nothing about this film that I can really critique.
No.
Again, I think it's a great film.
It's flawless, really, isn't it?
Yeah, there's action, there's gore.
Like I said, all the Tarantino.
It is. It is. I would almost say it's a Western style. That's what it feels like. But yeah, it's very Tarantino. And like we said, there's a lot of Tarantino films that we like, and we probably would have liked to include. But I thought this one is just, I don't know, spoke to me.
I just want to say, like I said, obviously the standout is Christopher Walken's Hans Landa.
Yeah.
Obviously he won an Oscar for it, which he deserved. Yeah. But he was a complete unknown. Tarantino saw his work on, I believe he was a stage actor. He was like, I want you to be in my film, and fits the part perfectly.
Well, obviously he'd worked a lot in Europe as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, yeah.
He's a sort of...
He's a two-time Oscar winner now, isn't he?
Yeah,
and he's
a often
big star.
Tarantino collaborator.
Yeah.
So.
No, very good film. Some really good films in this list, I must say myself.
Yeah.
Right. My next film is you couldn't get further away from Inglourious Bastards, is Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Yeah. And once again, this is always going to be on my top 10, I think, because it means so much to me.
Well, again, it's one of those that is widely considered to be better, the actual sequel better than
one of the best sequels of all time.
Yeah.
But this is the thing. At the time, it was such it was unlike James Cameron, this film.
Yeah.
You got the original Terminator, which was many people call it a slasher film, many people call it a horror film, which I can agree. It's like a horror sci-fi. You've done The Abyss, obviously, which is nowhere near the tone.
Well, Terminator was really low budget, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
It was sort of like a sleeper hit, really.
Didn't expect it to do well, really.
And then obviously this is kind of maybe the film he wanted to make, and he had the budget to do it.
Maybe.
I don't know.
But I mean, like I said, spoiler alerts. He turns T800 good.
Yeah.
And there's a bigger Jaws moment. There's a T1000.
Well, it's a time when Arnie was getting into like kids' films and more family-friendly films, and so obviously he wanted to have more. He wanted to change his image.
Yeah, to be the good guy.
Yeah, to be the good guy.
So basically the story is you got John Connor, and obviously Sarah Connor returns from the original. The Terminators send back a much more advanced T1000 to kill John Connor.
Liquid metal.
Yeah, liquid metal. Yeah, and then the Resistance then send their own Terminator back, a older model T800 to kill.
Reprogrammed.
Yeah, they reprogrammed it. I thought that would have been already,
Well, no, it's like.
But what I like about it at the start is they set it up like the T800 is still going to be the bad guy of the film. That you get another memorable scene, the bar scene, and he's just he's hurting civilians, like maybe near killing them, and you're like, okay, this is the same Terminator from the original.
I need your clothes, your boots, and your keys to your motorcycle. Yeah,
we're nerds, and
but yeah, and like you say, it's set up like it's only part way through the film you realise, because there's a scene where John Connor's in the mall, isn't he? And he's kind of running away from the security guards, and then suddenly the T800 appears, and he realises what it is, and he goes to run away from it, and then he realises that the T1000's there, and the T800's there to protect him.
Yeah, but he says get down, doesn't he? And but what I like as well is it sets up the T1000 to be the good guy. He's the one with he puts on the police uniform. What does police say? It says that he's a good guy. Yeah. He goes around asking people where John Connor is, so you're like, okay.
It's the T1000, everything he touches, he can turn into, so that's people, objects, isn't it? So yeah, he assumes the identity of this police officer, essentially, isn't it?
But basically, the reason why it's on my list is, once again, I do consider it better than the original, just because it's more teetered for my taste. It's, once again, an all-out action movie, isn't it? From start to finish. It just but it's not. It still is a brilliant movie. Like, it's still really highly regarded. You know, it's still a strong plot, strong story, brilliant characters. Once again, but it just turns everything up once again to 110. It just increases the stakes, increases everything about it, and once again, in my opinion, there's no flaws to this film.
Because in the film, Sarah Connor's initially reluctant to trust the Terminator.
Well, she's banged up, isn't she, in some loony bin, isn't she?
As the film progresses, she realises that the Terminator is probably the best father that figure that he can have, because obviously he'll never leave him, he'll never let any harm come to him, and that's
the thing with this as well. It's not just an action movie; it explores those sort of deep feelings and whatnot of fatherhood, what it means to be a father, you know, people's views on machines and whatnot, you know, and it's so much deeper than just your average action movie.
Throughout the film, John and the Terminator like form a close bond.
They do,
and they actually learn off each other, and it has like a really cheesy ending.
Hey, no, it's ending. I still tear up at that. But yeah, just it's action, but it's much. It's very deep plot. There's stakes in it, and the ending. I really like the ending. I mean, of course, you got the classic "Hasta la vista, baby," and "Come with me if you want to live" and stuff. But yeah, it's just a brilliant movie that like I said, it heightens everything from its predecessor. So that's why it's on my list.
Yeah, I mean, I saw this in the cinema, and it was kind of billed as cutting edge special effects.
Oh, and it
was at the time.
I believe ILM did it, didn't they?
I mean, it even actually holds up today when you watch it again. Yeah. But yeah, it was.
It's legendary, isn't it?
Yeah. So. Cool. Right, my next one of two Ridley Scott films on my list.
Two Ridley Scotts.
Yeah, Alien.
Yeah, and I know what the other one is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of odd because before this, Ridley Scott, like I say, he'd come from an advertising background. He'd made a film called The Duelist, which was kind of so far removed from this film. It was set in the Napoleonic Wars, and it was about two cavalry officers who had this. They had a series of duels over, I think, 15 years, and then suddenly he goes into this Alien. And for those people who haven't seen it, spoilers a lot. It's set in the future. It's about a ship. They're in sort of hibernation, returning to Earth. They're woken up because they receive a distress signal from a planet close by. And by sort of international law, they're required to go and investigate, which they do. They find an alien spacecraft, I believe, and all these sort of weird, look like eggs with things living inside. And one of the crew members, Kane, one of these things attaches itself to his face, and even though they're not supposed to bring him on board with this parasite attached to him, they do. They override sort of the protocols to do that, and all attempts to remove this sort of parasite, because what they find is that it's stuck to his face. It's got a tube down its neck, and they think that it's feeding off of him. And they try and remove it. It bleeds acid, so they feel they can't remove it without it killing him. And then all of a sudden it falls off. They decide to have a meal before entering back into hibernation.
I mean, he seems fine at this point, doesn't he? Yeah.
And at this meal, he starts coughing and convulsing, and then this little alien bursts out of his chest.
Yeah.
And it goes.
I mean, you think just in general cinema, this is one of the most iconic scenes, isn't it?
Yeah.
In history.
I believe they didn't actually tell the rest of the cast what was going to happen. So their actual reactions are real, genuine. But it's that kind of, and this alien starts to grow at a sort of accelerated rate, and it's picking the crew members off one by one until there's only one left, Sigourney Weaver. And it's kind of groundbreaking in a lot of ways as a film, having a female protagonist.
Yeah.
In it, a strong female protagonist. Because films, obviously, action films at that time didn't. And so it's
I mean,
again, it's a common theme. It's this kind of unknown, not necessarily creature, just unknown assailant that's killing people one by one. But it's just, I don't know, it heightens the tension being set on this spacecraft where there's lots of places to hide. It's hiding in the shadows. You could walk around the corner and it could be there. And there's a few jump scares involving the ship's cat and stuff like that. And it's often being parodied and copied a lot as well. So, but I just think, as a film, again, I can't fault it.
No,
it's beautifully shot, brilliantly acted, fantastic script. So what's not to like?
Well, if aliens came to Earth and they were like, give us a couple of films, that you think are the best for the whole genre, I'd give them Alien, because it is just that. You know what I mean? Though it's perfect, isn't it? It's the perfect horror movie.
Well, although it's kind of science fiction, I would say it is that classic, almost like slasher film, really, where people are being picked off one by one by this kind of unstoppable.
Can I just say though, as well?
Yeah.
For 1979, it has not aged a day, has it? It is still, it's still very relevant now, And like you said, it's been imitated a lot, but you don't get better than the original, do you?
No. Well, I mean, some people think Aliens is better, but it's a different type of film. It's an action adventure film. Alien 3, not great. And then obviously you've got the sort of prequels and other spin-off films as well. But I mean that's where it all started, and I don't think it'll ever be topped, really.
Just the paranoia you have in this film, So more than deserving, I think, to be on anyone's top 10. Well, my next one, I don't know if it's on yours, but it's Die Hard.
No, it isn't. Again, that should have been another honourable mention. Widely considered as being the best action film.
All that action film,
time.
Yeah. And this was right slap bang in the middle of when John McTiernan was just producing these absolute all-time action movies. You had Predator, you had Die Hard, Hunt for Red October, and this falls right in the middle, and it's arguably the best. The main thing I take from this is, I mean, I'll get into the plot first. It's about there's this skyscraper called Nakatomi Tower, which holds a lot of money in a bank, and it's just a simple, it's quite a simple plot, isn't it? The bad guys go in, take the plaza.
You got a group of bad guys led by Hans, played by Alan Rickman. And on the surface, they seem to be terrorists, and they're wanting sort of brethren around the world released. But actually, what they do after is the bearer bonds that are being held in Nakatomi vault.
But what I was saying is that it's such a simple plot, but it on paper, this film shouldn't be anywhere regarded as highly as it is. But I mean, when you actually watch it, it's such a different experience, and this really started the wrong man at the wrong place sort of thing. And the fact that Bruce Willis, before that, he'd been in a sitcom.
He'd been in a TV series called Moonlighting, which was kind of a comedy drama. It's a bit light-hearted.
I mean, look at Bruce Willis. At the time, you had the action heroes, you had Stallone, Schwarzenegger, these are the type of guys that would suit those movies, that their movies were that. And then you get this little...
I think they were considered, weren't they? I think even Clint Eastwood, Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Van Damme, people like that were considered for the part. But he's an everyman, isn't he?
He is.
That's what the appeal of it.
Yeah. Like I said, he's just that wrong guy in the wrong place.
Yeah. And who happens to be able to defeat international terrorists.
He doesn't have police training.
No, of course he is, yeah.
But this is, I think what's so great about it is that, it is that everyman, and you can see yourself. I mean, everyone's wanted to be John McClane, haven't they? You know what I mean? But it's just that those classic John McTiernan, that tight action scenes. One of the greatest antagonists of all time, and Hans Gruber, played by Alan Rickman, obviously.
Mr. Takagi will not be joining us for the rest of his life.
What more do you want?
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
like I said, it's once again another flawless film. In our opinion, in many people's opinion, it is the greatest all-time action movie.
Like you said, it did kind of kickstart that genre of film.
I mean, you'd have Die Hard on a plane, you'd have Die Hard and whatnot. You know, it created a genre of its own. But like I said, you don't get better than the original. It's just a brilliant action film, isn't it? You know, and once again, yeah, it's an action movie, but this got a really good plot, really good characters as well. Yeah, just everything you want. Every scene moves the film along. You know, it's needed. Great soundtrack as well. Brilliant ending. Brilliant start as well. And just to point out just to try and get people to understand how great the story writing in this is. Everything has a purpose. Like at the start, he's on a plane, isn't he, from New York to LA. And the guy next to him says that take your shoes off once you land, doesn't he? You know, and he says that you won't get it or whatnot. And he takes his shoes off somewhere down the film, along the film, sorry, and that becomes like quite a big plot point where when there's a fight scene, they shoot a glass, you know, and his feet start bleeding, and just like those type of things where it just sets up something, and it matters because it's a important plot point later. That's just an example, you know. It's that such good writing. Everything has a purpose, everything has a meaning, and it is a quintessential action film, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, for a film to create its own genre, then there you go, isn't it? You know, flawless action. And another great when you reminded me when you were saying about aliens with the scene where they weren't expecting it. Yeah. Well, obviously, once again, spoilers. Hans Gruber's hanging off of Nakatomi Plaza. He's hanging off of John McClane's wife Holly, and John, what is it? He takes off Molly's watch, doesn't he? Holly's watch, and you see this brilliant slow-mo shot, POV shot of just pure terror in Alan Rickman's eyes, and they didn't tell him that they were going to do it so soon. So you know, it's
well, they counted down and they 3, 2, 1 when they dropped him at 2.
Dropped him on 2. So, you just see that pure terror, don't you?
Yeah.
But no, it's just it's a quintessential action film, and if you haven't seen it, where have you been? And it is a Christmas film, so we say that a lot, but it is.
Yeah, it is.
I don't trust anyone that says it isn't.
And one of the best antagonists as well of movie villains.
Yeah,
we've covered that in another podcast. So yeah, all round,
it's brilliant filmmaking, isn't it?
So the next one is Raiders of the Lost Ark, 1981, which is the kind of offspring of George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. So what's not to like?
I believe Spielberg wanted to make a James Bond film, didn't he?
Yeah.
And then Lucas was like, no, don't do that, I've got something way better. Here's a story.
Apparently I think they were on holiday in Hawaii or something, and they would and both of them loved like the Saturday morning serials, you know, like I say, in the Buck Rogers and the Flash Gordon, and so they wanted to make, I think, something like that. I mean, you look at the character of Indiana Jones. He's a he's an archaeology professor by day, and he kind of side hustle is going out and retrieving rare artifacts, and so it is, and just this whole persona, the hat, the jacket, the whip, is very very Saturday morning serial, or very comic book as well, and it's a brilliant film. It's action, it's adventure, and again, there's just nothing I can say about it that I can critique about it. It is kind of wall-to-wall action from start to finish. I know Harrison Ford wasn't their first choice. They'd actually cast Tom Selleck as Indiana Jones, but I think he just shot a pilot for Magnum, and the TV network had just picked it up, so he couldn't obviously be in it. But now you can't imagine anybody else in the role. And some would, I mean, like you were saying, I think your favourite is Last Crusade, which again I really like, but this is where it all started, I think.
Well, this thing with these films, when some of them are just so flawed, there's not much more you can say, is there? I mean, this is, once again, like Die Hard, the action movie. This is the quintessential action adventure. You know, it's been done a million times. After this, never been up to those heights. But yeah, it's a
and again,
flawless film.
Both the opening and closing scenes we featured in other podcasts of best opening scenes, best closing movie endings, best movie openings.
I mean,
and it's just a very iconic film as well.
I was going to say, any film that introduces Indiana Jones, one of the single most iconic movie characters in history, you know. Yeah.
And, you know, there's been sort of criticism about the film, about the plot holes in it, and that the fact that he really has no influence on the actual storyline. You know, even though he goes out to get the Ark of the Covenant, the Nazis still end up with it, you know. And even at the end, when he does manage to retrieve it, it gets taken away from him and locked up in the storage warehouse. So, but it's just, it's a good fun. It's not gonna tax you mentally. It's no convoluted storyline. It's, like I say, just action, end to end action,
and another legendary soundtrack as well
by John Williams. So,
yeah, like I said, with these flawless films, there's not much you can really say about them, is there?
No.
Yeah, very good film. My next is a Star Wars movie, and it is. I was toying because this was probably one of the hardest decisions. Do I go Empire or do I go Return? I went Return.
Yeah.
And before everyone has their pitchforks up against me, you know, rioting, for a long time, Return was my favourite, and then more recently it was Empire. But I was weighing it up. If I was on a desert island and someone was like, okay, you can only take one of the two films, I'd take Return of the Jedi.
Plus a TV, DVD player, and means to power them as well.
I did not think of that. Thanks for that. I just, like I said, Empire is the better film overall. It's one of the best films ever made, but I just, like you with A New Hope, this means so much to me, because
I get it, right? I get that, because in a way it's kind of it's the third act of a 3-act play, and it's kind of, it ties everything up. It's a resolution, but a lot of people say, well, it's just kind of a rehash of the original film. You know, this new Death Star, you know, that they destroy and everything. But that's kind of a side plot, isn't it? It's the actual key plot, which is really about Anakin.
Yeah, but I mean, it's about Luke's story, but even more, it's about Anakin's story, isn't it? You know,
it's a story of redemption, really.
Yeah.
So,
first off, I know a lot of people. I've actually heard some people that say they don't like the Jabba's palace scenes. I really like them, because obviously in Empire, Harrison Ford didn't know if he wanted to come back for the third one, so they froze him in carbonite, and then the whole first act is the gang getting back together and retrieving Han. That just sets you up for the movie, doesn't it? You know, I know it's odd because it's some of the lightest scenes in Star Wars, but it's also some of the darkest scenes. But I'm just going to weigh up why my favourite bits of this film, because this is why it is on my list. Is because, one, I think the space battle is probably the best space battle in any movie ever. It's absolutely amazing, especially in Star Wars, and that's saying something. I love, like I said, the story, but I love the story of Luke, but also I prefer, it's Anakin's story in the day, isn't it? And I mean, just once you get past the Ewok stuff, I can look past that. Like I said, I grew up on those movies, and I quite like the Ewok bit. Once you start getting to the throne room stuff, it's just the best of Star Wars, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, there's negatives to it, but there's probably a lot more positives to it. I mean, the whole idea is that the Emperor's been orchestrating this whole thing, right from the start. He plans obviously to have Luke kill Darth Vader and become his
new apprentice.
Yeah, that's the whole premise. The idea of introducing the Ewoks is to show that you've got the Empire, who are technologically advanced, and the Ewoks are very primitive.
Yeah.
But they're able to defeat the Empire, and it's about a story about friendship and community and working together. I think is kind of what you take about that. But then obviously at the end, it's the scene where Darth Vader. Because what happens is during the actual film, Luke hands himself over to the Empire, believing that
still good in him, isn't there?
His father won't turn him into the emperor, because he can sense that there's a conflict in him. There's still some good in him. He does turn him over to the emperor, but right at the end, when the emperor realizes that he can't turn Luke to the dark side, he decides he's going to kill him.
Yeah.
And it's during that scene, and again it brings a tear to a grown man's eye.
Oh yeah, you could be the hardest geezer and it will make you cry.
Darth Vader basically redeems himself, kills the Emperor. Luke tries to save him, but he's too far gone.
But he says because basically, at the very they're fighting through most of the throne room scenes, and Luke's trying to hide his thoughts, but Vader's too powerful, and he finds out that Luke has a sister, which is Leia. Obviously, spoilers. He said, if you won't turn to the dark side, then perhaps you will. And that's when Luke knows that it's now or never. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't want Leia falling to the dark side as well. So there's this. It's so emotional, isn't it? This whole scene. You got the brilliant music in the background, and
I think that's probably some of the best music.
Yeah, it is,
and it adds to the scene.
Oh, it does, and there's by the way, on YouTube there's a 10-hour loop of just that stuff. Yeah. But obviously that's when you get to the scene of Luke using all that anger inside him, but you're like, oh my god, is he going to turn to the dark side? Obviously not. He cuts off Vader's hand like he did to him in the previous movie, and he sees that Vader doesn't have a hand either, and then there's a little bit of a moment in there, and you're like, oh my god, is this him turning to the dark side?
There's a little moment where he looks at his own robot hand, and Vader.
He's like, is this my destiny?
He kind of realises, is this what I'm going to become?
Yeah.
And so I think there's a flicker, like you say, and he just throws his lightsaber away.
Like, I'm never going to turn to the dark side. And
you will die.
That's when he starts using Force. We're getting really nerdy, but he starts using Force lightning. Vader's like, no. Because it goes back and forth. Luke's pleading with him, Father, please, I know there's still good in you. And then finally you just get him lifting up the Emperor and chucking him over the side to his death. I'm not going to count episode 9, that can piss off. He did die. Yeah. And you get this lovely scene where Luke drags him outside and onto an Imperial shuttle. And Vader's like, I want to look upon you with my own eyes. And you actually finally see what Vader looks like. You can see he's very scarred. I believe Sebastian Stan played him, didn't he?
Sebastian Shaw.
Sebastian Shaw, yeah, not Sebastian Stan. And Luke's like, no, Father, I can save you. And he's like, you already have, you already have. And
tell your sister you were right about me.
And it's just such a great story. Like I said, it may show some of the weaker points of Star Wars, but it shows some of the greatest, especially emotional moments in Star Wars, and it ends on the biggest high ever, because like Robbo said, it's a 3-act play. Those original trilogy, you got the beginning, you got the middle where the bad guys fight back, the Empire fights back, it strikes back, and then you got the end where it ends on a high, doesn't it? And I just think it's so effective, and yeah, it just is the best for Star Wars at times, So, and it means the most to me as well, and that's why it's on my list. Like I said, we could talk about Star Wars for so long, but
yeah. I think originally Lucas wanted Steven Spielberg to direct it, but I think Lucas fell out with the DGA, Directors Guild of America, didn't he? And because I think Spielberg was a member, he couldn't direct it. So he chose a guy called Richard Marquand, who hadn't really done a lot.
No.
Not really known for these sort of films. But I'm sure I've read somewhere that that pretty much Lucas kind of looked over his shoulder all the time and kind of almost directed it himself.
I believe at one point he let Ron Howard come on set as well, didn't he? And stuff.
Yeah, so...
But it's a bit inconsistent, you can tell, but yeah, just overall... It's
Again, I mean, it rehashes a little bit of the Star Wars storyline with the destruction of the Death Star and everything, and like you say, with the Ewoks and stuff. It's almost like he's kind of took elements from... Because supposedly, in order for him to write Star Wars, he had to write a whole kind of, universe.
Yeah.
And so, he says it's always his intention to make 3 films. I don't know if it was or not. But it seems like he's kind of trying to fit in stuff that he couldn't get in the other films into this one. But again, I mean, it's again, I would say Empire is probably the better film. But like you say, this just the end scene alone, I think, does...
The third act, like I said, is the best of what Star Wars has to offer.
Yeah.
So,
and it just kind of tie up the whole thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think we need to carry on talking about Star Wars.
Luckily, that's all the Star Wars there is today. So
I'm going to quickly move on to my second Ridley Scott film.
Yeah.
Which is
Blade Runner.
Yeah, Blade Runner. Again, it's a film that I recently rewatched, and just how brilliant it is. And to me, Blade Runner is a detective film noir.
Yeah.
It just has that whole feel of it, although it's set in a kind of futuristic world. I know there's elements of it that Ridley Scott... I mean, it depends what version you watch, because there are several different versions with several different endings. But I just think it's a fantastic film. Again, it's well written, it's well acted. It's based on a short story by Philip K. Dick, Do Aliens Dream of Electric Sheep. Set in the future. It's about a group of cyborgs, or the genetically created human beings, and they're sort of genetically created to be replicants. Yeah. And in order to basically control them, they're given memories, so that kind of grounds them, gives them some emotional stability. But what happens is there were a series of accidents, so replicants are outlawed, and they can only be used off planet, I believe. And then you've got this group of... Well, in order to control them, they're given a 5-year lifespan. So after 5 years, they die. But then it's about a group of replicants who come to Earth. They're led by Rutger Hauer, who plays a character called Roy Batty. They basically trying to live longer. So they go and they meet a guy called Terrell, who created them. And he basically says, there's nothing I can do. And so they kill him. And Harrison Ford plays what's called a Blade Runner. He's basically hunts down replicants. And originally he'd quit, hadn't he? But then they brought him back for this one mission. And it's a great film. Like I say, it's the whole look of the film is very noir.
Yeah.
You know, the city again. It's not. I don't think it's. Is it actually mentioned what city they're in?
No, I don't think it is. No,
but it's just like a normal metropolitan city. It seems to rain all the time again.
Yeah.
It's gritty.
I think it's well before its time.
Yeah.
I really do.
I know when it first came out, it wasn't very well received, but it was sort of 82, so it came out at the same time with a lot of other films as well, so it might have been kind of lost. And like I say, Scott wasn't particularly happy with some of the changes that the studio made to it.
Yeah.
But to me, again, there's nothing that I can criticise about it, and it's got a fantastic closing scene as well, and this fantastic monologue delivered by Rutger Hauer.
I mean,
just before he died.
That's the thing. What it does is it sets up that it's very definitively that Rick Deckard is the good guys and the replicants are the bad guys. But at the end, all the replicants want to do is just live. They just want to have a life, don't they? Because he actually ends up saving.
Well, at the end, there's a Deckard pursues Batty. It's over the rooftops, and like you say, he jumps from one building to the other, and he doesn't quite make it, so he's hanging off this building, and Batty actually rescues him.
Yeah.
He then gives this monologue and then dies. But like you say, it blurs the lines between the good guy and the bad guy, because some of the things Deckard does are not particularly great. And like you say, all the replicants want to do is what we all want to do. We want to live. We want to live a life. So
and it's a very sad movie. Yeah. But once again, like I said, it is so before its time. And now I'm glad that it really does get the praise it deserves. You know,
definitely. Yeah.
And this is literally Ridley Scott at his best.
Yeah.
Of course, Vangelis has a brilliant soundtrack as well, and There's a reason why it's so highly regarded. So, very good choice. Right, my next is I'm not going to spend too long on this, but it's The Matrix. It's a science fiction action film. It was brought to life by the Wachowskis, and what I can really take away from this film is it's probably, at the time it was a phenomenon, and even now it's still considered one of the greatest.
Well, it was a unique premise.
Yeah, it's so unique, and you're like, how do you come up with this? You know, just out of nowhere. And once again, it's one of those films where it's been tried to have been replicated so many times. You know, it set up that sort of cyberpunk phase where a lot of films went through. But I just think to myself, how did they come up with this premise? You know, so I'll just quickly explain what the plot is. So it stars Keanu Reeves as Thomas Anderson, and I believe he's a he's like a hacker, isn't he?
Yeah. Hello, Mr. Anderson. Yeah,
you should be a voice actor.
I think his hacker name's Neo, isn't it?
Yeah,
which is
but
storyline.
It sets it up like he just lives an ordinary life, and then these people, weird things start happening. These people start chasing him, and you're like, who are these people? And Trinity, played by Carrie-Anne Morris, she comes to him and explains that everything he knows to be real is really fake, and we get the famous scene with Lawrence Fishburne, Morbius. Do you take the blue pill or do you take the red pill? The blue pill would let him continue on his life. The red pill will show him what is really reality, what is actually going on, and he decides to take the red pill. And what that happens is he wakes up in the Matrix. Now, if we explain what the Matrix is, it is real life, isn't it?
Well, it's kind of the future. Obviously, the world's gone through.
Yeah.
It's post-apocalyptical. Machines have taken over, and what they're doing, they use humans really as batteries.
Yeah.
They use humans to power the Matrix.
And that's why when people actually
and the whole idea of plugging people into the Matrix, giving them these kind of almost like fake memories and a lot of fake life, is to be able to control them.
Yeah,
essentially.
and that's why you get these agents. The most famous one, the head being Agent Smith, played by Hugo Weaving.
Hello, Mr. Right.
I think that's all he says, isn't it? He goes out and his job is to capture the people that know, basically. And the reason why, you're probably thinking, well, why did they go after Neo if he didn't know any better? There's this whole law around surrounding the chosen one, isn't there?
It's that familiar trope of being like the chosen one. He's going to be the one that defeats the Matrix and, you know, frees everybody.
Yeah, can defeat the machines. Yeah. And what I love about it, like I said, it's maybe it's a slow burn at the start. You know, it has to set up everything, and maybe you just have to take it in. You have to pause it and take it in for about 10 minutes because it is such a unique plot, and it is quite a confusing film, I must admit. But once you get actually into the meat of the film, it's just non-stop action. And it maybe it's a bit dated now, you know, like all the slow-mo scenes and whatnot. But at the time, it was completely revolutionary. I mean, especially the Trinity Help Me scene where
well, you've got so the slow-mo 360 slow-mo sort of shots, which were like you say, you see it a lot now, but they were at the time revolutionary.
But what I love is it's so stylized, and it sets up this whole world, its own lore. There's this person called the Oracle, who is perceived to know everything, basically, and Morpheus sends Neo to her, and she basically says that you're not the chosen one, and it's really quite a dagger to the heart. Later down the line, somehow Neo finds himself basically ganged up against the agents. Morpheus has been captured, so Trinity and Neo go back into the Matrix. At this point, Neo is perceived to not be the chosen one, and you just get this great third act, just like I said, all full out action. And there's a brilliant scene where Neo, Morpheus, and Trinity go back. They leave the Matrix, and it's Neo on his own. And they basically can see people using code. They can see what's going on in the Matrix, and they see that Neo's taken on all these agents, and they see there's this brilliant scene where they're shooting bullets at him, and he just stops the bullets in midair, and Morpheus goes, he is the one. And like I said, it's quite hard to explain the Matrix in full, but all I'm just saying is if you haven't watched this movie, watch it, because it's such a unique premise. If you love cyberpunk, then it's the movie for you. If you love sci-fi action, then it is the movie for you. But like I said, it's such a unique movie that it will completely blow you away.
Yeah, and spawn 2 sequels and a kind of reboot as well.
Yeah, so. And I've seen every single one. I even like the sequels, so come at me.
Okay. Right, so my next one is The Thing. We've mentioned it before. It's a horror film. It's set in the Antarctic. I'll be very brief with this because we're kind of running kind of long on time. But essentially, you've got this Arctic outpost that scientists. The scene, the film opens with this dog being pursued through the snow by this helicopter, and they're trying to kill this dog. You don't know why. Dog makes it into this camp. The helicopter lands, and the guy shooting at the dog. He misses the dog, hits one of the scientists, and then the camp sort of leader Gary shoots the guy, and I believe the guy goes to throw a bomb, and he blows up the helicopter. So they put this dog in with the other dogs, and what it turns out is this dog is an alien, essentially, and the alien is able to infiltrate you at cellular level. So it basically takes you over from inside out, and it's able to create a perfect replica of you, which is a great premise because it means that you don't know who is the alien and who isn't. And all it's doing is wanting to survive again.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those kind of films where you've got this group of people trapped in this situation with a killer essentially with them.
Yeah.
They don't know who it is.
No.
And it's again, it's a John Carpenter film, and I think it was very. It came out in '82, like I say, with a lot of other films, and I think it was, I think, considered. One critic called it the worst film ever made, but I think now it's kind of revisionist reviews have said no, it is a masterpiece of horror.
Yeah,
genre.
it is.
Yeah, and it's got one of the best closing scenes as well. Spoilers: it's obviously stars Kurt Russell, but right at the end, Kurt Russell, his character McCready, and a character called Childs. They're basically at the end of the film. They get separated and they come together right at the end of the film, and neither of them know the camp's been destroyed by fire, and neither of them know which one, if any of them, is the thing, and it's this kind of suspense right at the end. I don't know what more there is to say about it.
No,
again, it's one of those films that I can't critique in any way. You know. The story's great. Obviously, it's based on a short story by Joseph Campbell. It was made into that story was made into a film in the 50s, but I don't think they had the technology back then to be able to actually, because their thing was more of an actual monster, alien. But this is. Again, this is more closer to the original source material, where like I say, the thing is this kind of unknown creature that can take you over at cellular level, and the worry is that if it gets outside, gets into the world, the population would be taken over within months, essentially.
Well, it is the perfect horror film, isn't it?
Yeah,
and it's just based on pure paranoia.
Yeah.
Yeah, what more can you say about the thing?
Watch it.
Definitely watch it.
Yeah,
I'm not going to focus on too much now because we're getting long times a bit, but I'll just quickly go over this. So my penultimate film is Inception. Just a quick plot. Cobb, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, is a world-renowned thief of dreams. So he's tasked with going into people's subconscious, stealing ideas and basically selling them. When that goes wrong, Saito, played by Ken Watanabe, the person he infiltrated his dreams, asks him to plant dreams, which is deemed impossible. It's never been done before. Cobb was like, I've done it once before. And he's an international criminal, he's banned from the United States, so he's banned from seeing his family, his kids, and Saito says that if you can do this, I'll grant you access back to the US. He's a powerful man. So the idea is that he's a business magnate, and he wants Cobb to plant information into his rival's son. Like I said, once again, it's so many different layers. It's a really, really unique premise, isn't it? But it is a masterpiece, in my opinion, and you can see that by the ratings. It's very highly rated. Christopher Nolan at his best. It took him 10 years. I think that's what he said. 10 years to write the film. I mean, it would take anyone more than that to write a premise this unique, and I think really what Inception shows is it shows completely thinking outside of the box, really, like The Matrix. How do you come up with something like that so detailed and so just, you've never seen it before, have you?
No. And the great thing about it is there's no real conclusion to it, because you're never quite sure what's real and what's not. So and basically, even the parts that are presented as kind of real, you're still not sure.
It just keeps you on. It just keeps you on your toes, doesn't it?
Keeps you guessing.
But basically, what he does is he gets together this crack team. You got Tom Hardy, Ellen Page, obviously Ken Watanabe himself, and that they're tasked with just going in and planting dreams, which is deemed impossible. It's got action in it. It's thrilling at times. It's got some of the best practical effects you've ever seen in your life. I mean, there's the corridor scene, and what Robbo was getting at is everyone carries a totem with them, and it either shows they use this totem to show if they're in someone's dream, if they're in the dream world, or if they're in the real world. So Cobb carries a little spinning top, and if it continues spinning, it means he's still in a dream. If it falls over, it means he's in the real world. And at the end, once, like again, spoilers, they're successful in their mission, and he returns back to the US. He goes through customs. What's really odd is you see him at the airport, and you see Michael Caine, which is his father, grab his bags, and it cuts straight to Cobb's house. But it's like they were still in the same. They were doing the same motion as they were in the airport. Just like they just randomly transported. It's quite trippy, and so you're thinking, okay, that's a bit weird. But you can look past it, and then he sees his kids, because his wife commits suicide previously, so it's him and his kids. And once he sees his kids, he gets his totem, he spins the totem, sees his kids, runs off after them, starts hugging them and embracing them. And the last scene of the film is it pans down to the totem, and it kind of, it's spinning, it kind of jiggles a bit, but it ends without showing you if it's stopped spinning or not. And it's just, like I said, it's such a unique premise, and it is a masterpiece of a film. And I think if you haven't seen it, then it can get a bit confusing, because there's extra bits to it, like there's different levels of dreams and stuff. But I mean, all round great performances. I've also forgot Joseph Gordon-Levitt's in it as well. He puts in a great performance. Cillian Murphy is the competitor's son. It's just all round great storytelling, and it's when he's at his best, Christopher Nolan is one of the best around, and it is his personal work. It is a passion project, and just great film, really great film, and a brilliant soundtrack once again from Hans Zimmer. So that's some great CGI effects. So what more do you want?
Exactly.
Watch this film.
Okay. Moving quickly on, my penultimate is The Godfather, a film which I know you've only seen recently, and you actually thought it was a good film.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you don't know, it's set in sort of post Second World War. Obviously, America. It's around the Corleone family, who were a mafia family, and Don Corleone, who's head of that family. You've got Michael Corleone, played by Al Pacino. He started the film. He's returning back from the war. He is a reluctant member. Well, not a reluctant member of the family. He's not interested in getting involved in the mafia life. That's why he went to join up and fight in the war. But after an inter sort of family war where there's an attempt on Don Corleone's life, he's kind of dragged into it, and this all stems from the other. I think there's 5 families in there. These other families want to start dealing drugs, but he's absolutely adamant that he doesn't want to, and that leads the other families to try to assassinate him. This causes Michael to get sort of drawn into the whole mafia life. He actually assassinates. I think it's the police chief who's in the he's in the payroll of the other families, and then he goes to hide out in Sicily. His brother Sonny, played by James Caan, is murdered. He comes back, and then he basically then assumes the role of Godfather, takes over the family business, and you kind of you see how he's slowly drawn into that mafia life until he's completely immersed in it. and how he goes from being a reluctant, like I say, reluctant to join that, into being the Godfather, essentially, and that's the story. It is an epic film. It's a long film, but again, there's nothing I can't critique it in any way. There's nothing negative to say about it. It's hard to sort of pigeonhole it in genre. It is a kind of gangster film, but there's also drama as well,
action as well.
Lots of dialogue, but again, it's a brilliant film, and I would urge anybody to watch it. Brando, who at that time was kind of on his way down, I think the studio were kind of reluctant to work with him because of he was a little bit I think unpredictable at that time, but he really campaigned hard for the part, and he gave an Oscar-winning performance. So brilliant film.
Just his great story writing in it, really.
It is.
And I mean, once again, what more can you say? It is one of the most celebrated movies of all time, isn't it? And it certainly deserves it.
Definitely.
So right, my final film is no shock, because I think it's always top on every list I have, but it's in sort of the same caliber of those movies before. It's The Dark Knight. I was a bit sad because I was originally going to include Batman Begins on here as well, but then I thought, okay, no, I'm gonna.
Yeah, like I say, I'm a total convert, because I've never been a big fan of superhero films. I'm not a big fan of Marvel, and it was only when you agreed we said, you'd watch The Godfather, I'll watch the Dark Knight trilogy, and but again, it's when I first watched them, I thought Batman Begins was the better one, because I love an origin story, and then you rewatch it, and then I realised, Dark Knight is the better film, and I thought that Dark Knight Rises was fairly weak. Watched it again recently, and I think Dark Knight is the best of the three, but the other two
still up there,
are probably equal and still up there as well. So it is. I just.
Oh, this is the thing, right? So first of all, the plot of the movie is that Batman. Obviously, Batman Begins. It shows him at the start of his career, and this is set a couple months afterwards.
Because I think it's always difficult when you've got the first of like a trilogy. Is you've got to introduce all the characters, and there's a lot of sort of procedural stuff that you got to get out of the way before you can get to like the actual story, meet the story, like you say. So
once again, it is a very the three films, like Star Wars, it is middle, beginning, and end, isn't it? But this middle, once again, I think it's very widely considered the best of the three, and one of the best movies of all time. But just getting into the plot, Batman's basically cleared up the streets. He's frightened all the criminals and gang members, where they have to bring their dealings and illegal activities underground. You got like the Eastern European mafia. You got like the African American mafia, like gangs and stuff, and they all have this meeting. They're like, how can we take down? Why are we doing this? Heath Ledger's Joker walks in and says, your problem is the Batman, and I can take him down. And it's about this sort of cat and mouse game between Batman and the Joker, and that's like the main plot of it. But first off, one of the greatest opening scenes, isn't it, in history?
Well, the thing is that all the money is being held in these banks, aren't they? All the gang's monies, and it starts off with the Joker basically robbing these banks and stealing their money. And again, like you say, it's got a fantastic opening scene to it, the bank heist, and then he's saying, right, he takes them, shows them the money, and says, right, I'll kill the Batman. I just want to keep half of it. Yeah. But then he ends up burning it, doesn't he? To prove that money isn't important to him.
And to prove, and along the way, Alfred says that some men just want to some men just want to watch the world burn, isn't it? And that sort of proves it. But like I said, it's just...
It's like all the way through the film, there's little plot points, but then you realise at the end that the Joker's orchestrated all of this.
Yeah. But this thing, so let's get... So, because there's so much to talk about this film. First off, the standout of this film is the Joker. I think it's very much a Joker story. Where Batman Begins is Batman's story. Yeah. This is Joker's story. Everyone knows how brilliant Heath Ledger's portrayal of the Joker is. One of the greatest acting performances in history. Just proved that he won an Oscar that year against very tough competition. We can get that out of the way now, so because everyone knows how great his performance is. You can see the Heat sort of
influence.
Yeah, Heat influence in there. There's a couple. Christopher Nolan took some elements from The Killing Joke, the book, the comic book, Long Halloween. You see a bit of detective work in there, but overall, it's just it keeps you on your seat the whole time, doesn't it? It's just action, thrills. It's a lot more dialogue heavy than the original. The original, I'd say, is a full-on action movie. Where this is just it's just pure filmmaking. It's just brilliant, and it's this sort of crime thriller that just happens to be a Batman movie, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It doesn't chuck it in your face like Marvel do, where it's a superhero movie. There's barely any humour in it whatsoever. It's just pure, simple crime thriller storytelling at its best. Brilliant soundtrack from Hans Zimmer, and it played where the first one played on fear, themes of fear. This one plays on the fact that the goodness of inside people, and the like there's a scene at the end where these two boats, and one of them's got convicts on, the other's got innocent people on. And now the Joker, he's planting bombs on each one, and he says, right, I don't know if I think it's an hour. In an hour, both bombs are going to go off.
It's at midnight. So both bombs are going to go off, but each boat has got a detonator for the other one. And so it's up to the people then to decide, and he's relying on sort of people making that decision, but he doesn't. He kind of. It's all about the goodness of people.
Well, he says that because when he sees the bombs don't go off, neither boat blows up. He's really surprised. He's like, "Well, you got to do everything yourself." And then you get this great sort of speech by Batman, and it's basically saying that not everyone is like you, because he basically the whole film Joker is just trashing the people of Gotham.
Because it's there's a bit of it's that psychological torch as well, because obviously in the film he kidnaps Harvey Dent, and he kidnaps Rachel, and he has them sort of held hostage, and he gives basically Batman the choice of which one he's going to rescue, and he chooses Harvey Dent, and that's, you see Harvey Dent then become Two-Face as well. So yeah, it's that kind of choice where nobody wins.
No, but it's, like I said, it plays on those themes of that Batman says to him that you're on your own, with your way of thinking, that these people aren't lost causes, that they don't stoop to your level, that these are good people of Gotham. And obviously with the Harvey Dent side of things, I think Aaron Eckhart's portrayal of Harvey is really overshadowed, of course, by Joker, but he puts in a really great performance, and he's the DA of Gotham. They call him the White Knight. He's Gotham's number one person, and Joker basically sends him down this path where he falls into madness, and he falls into something that is the total opposite of him. And they say at the end where that he's taken Gotham's best and turned them into the worst, but and the ending as well is people expect superhero movies, they're going to have these huge CGI battles and stuff. It's not like a big, huge, massive battle, is it? It's just pure storytelling, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you get the great, obviously, the great quote, "You can die a hero, you can live long enough to see yourself become the villain."
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happens to Harvey Dent as well, isn't it?
But obviously at the end what happens is Harvey Dent he's done all these things as Two-Face, but they don't want that to ruin the image that they've got of him.
Because the people of Gotham hold on to the fact that they do have people like Harvey in their city and stuff. So
the Batman ends up taking responsibility for some of the things that he's done, and he then becomes a pariah and disappears. Yeah, essentially because Gotham no longer needs him. No, and that's what he says. I'll stay and be Batman as long as Gotham needs me. Yeah,
and I think Commissioner Gordon says that he's the hero Gotham needs, but not what they need right now. Yeah, sort of thing. So what I'm trying to get at is this is still, 14 years later, still the quintessential comic book movie. It's one of the greatest movies of all time, and if you haven't watched it, where have you been? That's what I'm saying. So
yeah, like I say, I was reticent at first, reluctant to watch, but yeah, I'm a complete convert now. So
nice,
very good film.
Thank you.
And my last one is Jaws, which is probably one of my all-time favourite films. Yeah. If you don't know what Jaws is now, take a hammer and hit yourself over the head. But the premise is, it's a great white shark. It stakes its claim off of the small island of Amity. It's killing people. The police chief, played by Roy Scheider, Chief Brody, he's obviously concerned, but the mayor and the other sort of elders of the town, they don't want to close the beaches because they feel it's going to ruin their 4th of July celebrations. That's the busiest time of year, and it's going to ruin them financially. So against his judgment, he leaves the beaches open, and so when more people get killed, he kind of takes it almost personally. And it's that kind of that Die Hard thing, isn't it? It's that guy in the wrong place at the wrong time, And then he eventually, when an incident happens with his son, he convinces the mayor to hire Quint, who's a shark fisherman, and they go off along with Matt Hooper, played by Richard Dreyfuss, who's a shark expert, and they go off to try and hunt this shark and kill it. The great thing about this film is it's not about a shark really, it's about an unstoppable kind of force. It's that almost like a Halloween or even like an Alien. You've got this group of people, and the shark almost possesses sort of supernatural powers. There's been a lot obviously written about the making of the film and how difficult it was. There's actually a play on at the moment called The Shark is Broken, and that's the behind-the-scenes look at the relationship between the three main actors, because, apparently there was some sort of bad blood between some of them. But again, it's I think Spielberg came off the back of a TV film called Jewel, which is about a salesman played by Dennis Weaver who, for some reason, doesn't know, pisses off this lorry driver, who then just pursues him for no apparent reason, trying to run him off the road. And it's that kind of unstoppable force kind of film.
You can see the same themes, definitely, can't you?
They built this mechanical shark, which didn't work for a lot of the time, so Spielberg had to kind of compromise, and he had to sort of intimate the shark was there by using like the barrels and other things as well, the devices, which actually adds to the suspense, I think. Oh yeah, because I think the shark was supposed to be seen a lot more in the film. Right at the start with the girl swimming, the shark was supposed to be seen, but I think it's scarier her just being pulled around in the water than it would be if you actually saw the shark.
No, 100%.
Yeah, and again, there's nothing I can criticise the film for. I still think it stands up today. It's brilliantly shot, obviously adapted from a story by Peter Benchley. Again, it was a troubled production. I don't think the studio had much faith in it, but it was a sleeper hit. Was the biggest grossing film of its time before Star Wars came along.
The first summer blockbuster as well.
Exactly. So there's lots of positives about it.
And a running theme as well.
Yeah.
Another great soundtrack by John Williams.
Yeah. And again, it's like, what's not to like? And it's got a big ass shark in it. a couple of changes from my original list. I know you have as well.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to change,
Yeah, that's the beauty of film as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, film, I like to be surprised by films, and a lot of the time I am. And films that I don't think I'm going to enjoy or like, I do. So, yeah. And I think a little bit better than our first podcast.
100%, yeah.
So, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
We are going to go back to our normal weekly podcast. We are hoping to maybe release the occasional bonus podcast midweek.
I think we'll be focusing on a specific movie, won't we? It's not going to be as long. But,
it won't be as long. But as all that's left is to thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Hope to see you again next week. Bye. Goodbye.